This is Paul Murray Live.
How good is this? What a day it's been around here. Everyone is so excited. It's sort of a mix between, first day of a new school year, a brand new car that nobody wants to muck up the upholstery on, but also the familiar feeling of what you know we do and what we do from the start of every day to the end of every night, what we have built online. There's a lot of people behind the scenes to make all of this stuff happen, and to all of them, well done. What an incredible job you've done today. And let us begin the brand new era for News 24 with Paul Murray Live, exactly where you want it, right here, each and every night, Sunday through Thursday. All right. Again, nothing really changes in terms of my worldview. Oh, apart from, I think I'm now going to be a supporter of the Labor Party. I think we decided, no, kidding, relax. So let's get to the reality. When it comes to this government, do not judge them on what they say, judge them on what they do. Now, the Labor Party conference came and went over the weekend. I don't care either. But one thing, was a message they were trying to hammer away at us all weekend long.
Cost of living.
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 Oh, and the Prime Minister, front and centre, before he pats Toto in the morning, what's he thinking about?
And that is why our focus remains squarely on helping with the cost of living.
Well, if you're a regular viewer of the program, you know here comes the sting in the tail, here comes the bite, here comes the but. So despite the fact that all of that has just been said, guess what is going to be happening at the end of this week? Not the end of next month, this week, the end of this week. Petrol taxes are going up. So despite the fact cost of living, we're doing everything to focus on cost of living, they are increasing petrol taxes within a week of saying all of that, hoping that no one will notice that the price of petrol is going to go up. The whole 52 cents a litre of every litre of all types of fuel that you put into your car, your mini-moke, your truck, or even your plane, all of it, 52 cents per litre. When the Prime Minister was asked about this, well, of course, blah, 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 blah.
Any more fuel excise relief?
But importantly, well, that's not in our planning at this point in time.
So dare I say he's changed his position? Now, again, remember, when this government, and they're still not great in the polls, but when they were at the worst point in the polls, when already interest rates had gone up twice of the 3 times this year, and remember, it's now 15 times since these people took over, all right? Don't be blown away by the spin. Let's keep an eye on the main game here, right? Life has got materially harder for anyone trying to pay off a house. It has got materially harder for anyone who's trying to rent a house because of this government. The Reserve Bank, 2 of the 3 interest rates thus far, nothing to do with the Iran war, okay? Inflation in Australia running hotter and harder and higher than the United States, the United Kingdom, let alone the 1.5% inflation rate that exists right now in Japan. And when this government decided, you know what, our cost of living relief is that we're not going to charge the full 52 cents. No, we're going to drop it down, not to 0, but they're only going to halve it to what, about 25 cents per litre. The Prime Minister was greeted by the usual people in the media as the working class hero that he thinks that he is. Remember, this is what happened when they cut the tax that they will put back on Friday.
Relief at last for drivers as petrol prices soar, with the government to halve the fuel excise for 3 months.
Cutting the tax on fuel is now part of a multi-billion-dollar plan to help ease the crisis.
The fuel excise will be slashed for 3 months in half.
Slashed savings, relief! Well, the slash has now been stitched up, the relief has completely disappeared, and of course no one's going to hold him to account. Because, you know, we move on to something else. One nation, terrible. Seriously? Well done, Prime Minister. No matter how many times we lose, you keep on winning. And he was talking about, everyone gets a tax cut. That was $5. $5 a week. The increase in petrol tax that's happening this week will be about an extra $8 every time you fill up. So it just disappeared like that. See, what this government has done is essentially they have somewhere between, let's say, $2 and $3 billion. And this is the same $2 and $3 billion that they had at the start of their government. That was the $1,500 guaranteed cost of living for all workers. Well, they got rid of that. And they've slowly but surely, 250 here, but then they take it away. And then they give you 230 here, and then they take it away. And then they give you 110 here, and then they take it away, and then they give you 50 here. Slowly sort of weaning you off the drug while they still claim full credit as if they are there holding your hand every time somebody asks for money. Do not judge them on what they say, on what the media puffs up on their behalf. Judge them on what they do. If they're serious about constant and relentless help with cost of living, they will get rid of the 52 cents a litre. Not halve it, not put it up by another quarter. They will get rid of it. But of course, they wouldn't want to do that, would they? They need their oh so important millions of dollars to be spent on social media videos. I've got something special to tell you about that in a moment or two's time. Now, yet another poll, but relax. I will not bore you with too much detail on this, but it's a really interesting one because we remember, keep being told the sky's falling in, one nation is over, they're done. Well, current makeup of the federal parliament, okay? You need 76 seats to become a government. The Labor Party well and truly has enough of them with 94 seats. Coalition doesn't have nearly enough at 41 seats. One Nation has 2 seats, one being the defection of Barnaby Joyce, one being the election in the seat of Farrer. The Greens have 1, and others, including the Community Independents or the Tiffany Teals, 13. Well, today, massive new poll has shown that the idea that the bubble has burst from One Nation is folly, rubbish, not true. In fact, they've even got so detailed here that even after the supposed collapse in support for One Nation, they can now start to tell us what they think would happen if there was an election happening now. There isn't one for 2 years. These numbers most likely don't end up being the future. But right now, in the inner cities, Labor is the leading party at 31%, followed by the Libs and Nats. The Greens are ahead of One Nation. This is in the inner city seats. There are lots of those around central Sydney, central Melbourne, central Brisbane. In the suburbs, the old Howard battlers from many, many generations ago. But again, the suburban number, who's number one? One Nation at 30%. Then followed by Labor, then followed by the Coalition, then followed by the Greens, then followed by everyone else. Funnily enough, the Tiffany Teal number falls once you start to get into the suburban areas. That is where the vast majority of seats are in Australia. So One Nation is leading right now. You put it together with the Nats, it's more, with the Libs and Nats, it's 50% of the vote is away from Labor and the Greens right now, meaning big change coming if there was an election anytime soon. Once you get into regional and rural areas, One Nation up at 41%. Now, of course, the Libs don't exist, the Nats don't exist in the inner cities. The Libs don't exist in the regional areas, so it's more National Party here. That's at 20%, Labor at 18%, Greens at 9%, and others at 12%. What does that mean? Well, it means Labor would go from 94 seats in the parliament to 68. They would be many seats short of the 76 required to be the government. The Coalition could get knocked down to just 13 seats in the parliament. One Nation could surge from 2 to 60 seats in the parliament. Labor would end up losing specifically 26. One Nation would go up by 58. The Libs would go down by 30 seats. Blimey. The Greens would actually gain a couple of seats. Again, you can see the One Nation number there. And in the other, they would lose half of those. Now, a couple of those are sort of counted as the country independents. Again, I don't think these numbers are anything you can take to the bank. I don't think these are the numbers that are what is going to be at the election. But for all of these supposed the sky is falling in, Demos AU today puts out the detail, shows you in the city, in the suburbs, in the regional areas, and tells you the 3 different versions of Australia, a story that, most importantly, forget the how much is One Nation, how much is the Coalition. The story is that the government would lose 26 seats, that the government would be 8 seats short of a majority. Now, would they be able to get it with the Greens and the Tiffany Teals? Sure. But if you're taking that towards an election, it's a very different prospect than the one that, of course, happened just, 18 months ago. Speaking of Pauline Hanson, you know what we're doing this time tomorrow night, and that is Pauline Hanson is going to be in our studio at the News24 headquarters. She is going to be here answering questions from both in the studio, from me, but most importantly, from around the country. Yeah, you know we've done our pub test, we've done our Ask Me Anything. Well, all of this is turned up to 11. The country always hangs off what she has to say, and most importantly, she is talking to as many of you as we can possibly do. This time, tomorrow night, I guarantee front row seat for you, because it'll be making news for quite some time. Pauline Hanson, please explain. 9 o'clock tomorrow here, wherever you watch News 24. Now, as you know, I have spent plenty of time talking about how they love to spend your money, how, frankly, they love spending other people's money. But I specifically have made quite a feature since before the last election about the crap social media videos which are presented to us every single day. And I could almost fill a whole show, just like Rita can with Lefties Losing It. Maybe there's a sub-genre, a spin-off show that we can do about While You Were Working Here, when we could just focus on this stuff. Because not only do I find this stuff patronising, I also find this stuff a giant waste of time and money. And you know the rubbish social media videos that while you are working, these people skip around the corridors like they're trying to become influencers, not legislators.
Do you want the house tour? I could take you to the first, second, third floor.
Did you know you're getting another tax cut?
Preparation for National Press Club address, projector screen, check. Multiculturalism, check.
My most used emoji at the moment is the melty face.
Now, again, all of this is so patronising. It's about talking to people like it's a kid's show, right? Like it's Play School, like it's Romper Room, like it's, you know, the Teletubbies. It's such garbage. And to me, no matter its apparent effectiveness, and look, obviously Labor had a good game at the last election. It was part of how they were able to do in the coalition. But it is just not where a healthy adult democracy should be. Well, thankfully, a couple of other people have started to notice this trend, including in the Daily Telegraph over the weekend, where they were looking about just how much money is going to all of this. Australia's federal politicians are spending millions of dollars of taxpayers' money and countless hours producing social media videos for TikTok and Instagram that are being watched for less than 3 seconds, prompting calls for tighter rules on public expenditure for online content. I agree. If the political party want to pay for it, fine, fair enough. But you don't get to film this during office hours, and you don't get to film it with a staffer whose almost exclusive job is to follow you around like you're a celebrity. The Australia Institute's Democracy and Accountability Program, well, they've said that the posts need to be labelled to allow taxpayers to judge if their money's being spent wisely. Good. Imagine if you had a little message on this, paid for by you. Not authorised and spoken. It's not. It might be authorised by the political candidate, but it's not paid for by the political party. Quote, there is not always a clear line between self-promotion, public engagement and public information. But when it invokes a taxpayer resource like staff, I hope that the emphasis is on public information and engagement. So, for example, seeing that nonsense of Cara Cook, the member for Bonner in Queensland, we show her all the time because she keeps putting this crap out. I've got a blankie. Like, really? Well, tonight's latest examples of adding to while you were working, yet another example about while you work hard to pay too much tax, to pay not just for the politicians, but for the staffers and for the social media videos that they ram down our throats to treat everyone like a moron. Well, unsurprisingly, our old mate, the Labor Senator, Charlotte Walker, what's she got for you tonight?
5 things that are worth your money. Number 1, Netflix subscription. Cheeky Greek gyros and endo clinics. A union membership. Medicare urgent care.
Andrew Lee, who is the Assistant Minister for Productivity. Oh, he's very creative on the TikTok.
Reading the latest One Nation news is like watching an episode of the latest epic fantasy drama. Except instead of the House of the Dragon, it's House of Grievances. One Nation has the drama, the claims to power, and you don't need to look far to see that voters are hesitant.
Now, he does look like someone who's into Dungeons and Dragons. No offence if you're somebody who is, but serious. Again, this is a person sitting around power, not on the fringe, not right on the outside, not some sort of candidate for local council who's got 4/5 of bugger all chance of being elected. This is a person who is sitting around the table of power in the country. And this is how they talk to people. Because, of course, if you engage with the issues, well, that bores people, right? So let's just point and say, weird, weird, not like us, weird, strange, strange. It doesn't matter what their policy is, you just distort it, you just lie. And we're not done. There's another one here again. This is, I believe, Senator Mulholland serving up another effort on the behalf of the Labor Party. You pay for this.
If I
Yeah, vote for me. I can knock on a screen door. Millions of dollars. Millions of dollars. Anyway, it provides us with the content and we'll do the looking for you each and every day, but still, just ridiculous. Truly crazy. All right, a couple of other things I want to get to before I get to the mess that is happening in Victoria right now. Now, in Australia, not that long ago, not last century, this century, this is how Australia used to sell cars to Australians when Holden was number one.
Thunder, a big scary noise made by lightning in the sky. Thunder Ute, a new mean machine made by Holden on the ground. With 19-inch charcoal alloys, that's one shade tougher than gunmetal grey. Leather-bolstered seats made from only the angriest cows. Holden IQ sat-nav with live traffic alerts you used to get from some muppet in a chopper. And a big badge on the side that says, nah, 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 nah.
Such toxic masculinity, but it was popular. Yes, there was an era where the louder and the faster it went, give me I'll give you my money. We loved it. That's the way cars were sold. And look, cars are still sold like that for many people. But also, as a person who's got petrol and cholesterol in my veins, that's the way I want to get around. But I get it, EVs, incredibly popular. I also will never hide the truth from you, and the truth is that EVs through the roof at the moment. Of course, majority Chinese made, but who cares, whatever, look the other way. 103,000 battery electric vehicles have been sold nationally between January and June this year. That is up compared to previous years. The battery EVs share of the new sales market has actually doubled for the same time last year. It's gone from 10.3 to now 23% of the market. Yeah, but do they do those ads where they turn around and tell you that the leather comes from angry cows? Oh, I love those ads. I miss them. I really do. All right. I can't put it off for long enough, so let's get to it here. Jacinta Allen this close to being gone.
Well, all of a sudden it's become very, very hard for Premier Allen to keep her job.
She is the most unpopular Premier in the country, one of the most unpopular Premiers in Australia's history.
Jacinta Allen informed by colleagues she no longer has the support of the Labor Party. She is tonight refusing to resign.
And plenty of ministers have gone, looked her in the eye and said, look, Premier, you're done. Time to give up, including, by the one who gave the character reference to the people who wanted to stay in the country despite some of their dodgy legal history. Yeah, well, she was one of the ones who knocked on the door today. As you've heard, the dissatisfaction level, according to News poll today, it's in the 70s right now. It puts her as the most unpopular Premier in the history of News poll. We are saying more unpopular than the worst of Bjelke-Petersen, the worst of John Cain, but of course they went on to name an entertainment venue, one of the places around the tennis centre after John Cain. And our old mate KK, well and truly in front in terms of how despised by the electorate. As for the overall electorate right now, well, the Libs would look like that they're on a way to a victory, and that will come as a result of One Nation preferences. One Nation preferences are going to be a little bit more loyal to the coalition than coalition preferences are going to be to One Nation. And in two-party preferred terms, what's gone from 55-45 in favour of Labor is now 52-48 in favour of the coalition. But the reality is, whoever the Premier is, be it today, tomorrow or the day before the election, there is a lot of problems in Victoria. David Limbrick is a man who does not have a dog in the fight because he's a libertarian and he wants to continue on with his presence in the upper house along with many others to join him. He's a fellow freedom fighter and he joins us now from the great state of Victoria, where you're about to get a new king, or the Queen may hold on for a little longer. What's your thoughts of a potential change to the Premier of your fine state?
Well, I think Victorians don't really want a new face. They want a new direction. And I think it's going to be up to whoever is going to provide that. Now, the challenge that's happening at the moment is quite interesting because Jacinta's apparently said, well, if you challenge me, I'm going to put myself up as a candidate. And under Labor's rules, which were instituted a while ago to, protect against sort of frivolous challenges, that would have to go to the membership of the Labor Party. And it's my understanding that under their rules, if that actually happened during that time where they're having that vote, neither of them are allowed to be the leader. So they would be leaderless for a period of time. So it's a fascinating scenario. I don't know whether she's bluffing or whether she's serious about this, but, she said she's serious and she's written a letter and published it to the Labor Party administration. Ben Carroll's put up his hand and said that he's going to challenge. So really it comes down to, is this just a bluff by the Premier, or is she actually going to see this out? And if she sees it out, what's her popularity like? Not amongst the Victorian people, unfortunately, but amongst the Labor Party membership, which is a crazy scenario.
Well, correct, right? So look, again, I don't want to bore everyone with too much about the absolute inner workings of the Labor Party, but there's a process where she can't just put her hand up and say, I want to be a candidate. There has to be a series of MPs who would agree for her to even get on the ballot. So the theory here is, and it's not me correcting you, it's me just explaining to everyone at home here, right, which is, presumably even the hardest of hardcore supporters don't want to go through that bizarre scenario, even if they think, the membership somehow will march and rally behind her. And look, it should be hard to depose a sitting leader, but this is a sitting leader who basically got a rails run into the premiership. Remember, nobody saw Andrews leaving when he left. There was no pre-speculation. He said, I'm out, she's replacing. He tried to bully into the deputy. Thankfully, that didn't end up happening, so at least they've got a chance of this fight. But let's imagine it all does happen where there's going to be a change. The expectation is Ben Carroll comes out and says, look, I completely agree, let's have a royal commission into the big build. Labor, of course, being able to write the rules, would be able to sort of etch them around to save a little this and that. But is that going to be enough? Is that going to be the circuit breaker? How long a tour does a new Premier have to go on saying sorry for decisions that he was in the room for, well, way back in Andrews' time?
Well, I think he's going to have to do a lot, and if he becomes the Premier, and he doesn't have much time to do it. Like, I'm not even sure what his profile's like within the community, and just calling a royal commission, no, that's not enough. In Victoria, we wake up every morning just about to stories of a new firebombing attack. Every morning we see that. It's absolutely out of control, organised crime in this state, which is, of course, connected to what's happening in the construction sector. People feel that, like, the government's lost control of it, which they have, and they need a plan for getting it back under control. And I don't see any public statements by either of the either the Premier or Mr Carroll about what they're going to do to fix this. Just announcing a royal commission alone, that's, too little too late in my view. It needs to happen. But there's a lot of other problems in this state. And I think he needs to say, like, what's he going to do that's different from what they've been doing so far?
Yeah, I mean, your privileged position in the upper house is that if the government was mature, they would be seeking your vote. But obviously they've just gone, oh, the Greens, that gives us the number. We'll sort of deal with David if and when we have to. But that said, again, without breaching confidences, what do these people like to deal with behind the scenes? Are they people who will, by the time they get to you, there's a little bit of horse trading to be done, or are they legitimate when you put something on their desk and you make the case to them? Is it hardcore sort of party first? Give us an idea about what it's like to deal with them, or frankly anyone in the government, when you're from outside of it.
Well, they've actually changed a lot since Dan left. When Dan was in, he had his favoured people that he dealt with, and everyone else was just totally frozen out. I will say this, since Premier Allen's come in, they've been worked very hard to try and sell what they're doing to the crossbench. Not very often they succeed with me, but sometimes they convince me of something. But, like when I put things to them, I feel like they listen, but they never actually act. They're very good at listening and not acting. So, like the relationship has improved a fair bit as far as, the government and the crossbench since we've had a new Premier. But, I don't feel like they're doing a lot of things that the crossbench want. They've got their own agenda. And I think the other thing here, which is the real unknown, is that Ben is he's from the wrong faction. Like, Labor's all about the factions, right?
Yep.
And he's from Labor right. I don't know how that's playing out internally, but like a large proportion of the membership of Labor probably feels pretty nervous about the idea of him becoming Premier, I would guess. But maybe they just feel that they're so desperate and in such a dire situation that they have to do something. I mean, it's pretty crazy that, you know, we've gotten to this state now where the Liberal Party is only, even though Labor is in such a mess, the Liberal Party is only just squeaking above in polls, and it's comparing to One Nation, which basically have no candidates. They're basically an empty chair at this point, and they're still doing really well. So it's sort of a crazy situation. One Nation might pull their finger out and do a lot of things between now and the election. So I don't think anyone from the major parties should feel comfortable with the current situation.
Yeah, I agree. I can see, you know, all the obvious scenarios, including Labor being re-elected, all right? I mean, it is fundamentally a progressive state. It is a state that has embraced it regardless of the punishment of which the government, in many ways, frankly, a little bit sort of like some of those blue states, blue cities in America, where you go, why do you keep voting for this? Well, because we're not the other guys, right? But obviously there are lots of other options, right? We know how dissatisfied people are with major party politics. We've seen people like the cannabis people get a couple of people elected. We know when it comes to the Greens. Previously, there's been, you know, transport thing here, or of course the Hinch Party was sort of in and out for a little while. I don't know what's going to happen with Victorian Socialists. I'm not particularly thinking they're going to sweep the joint, but could they end up shoving somebody in as a result of these preferences? Maybe. So give me the libertarian pitch for how you stand out in the reorganisation of Victorian politics, regardless of who ends up as the government, be it majority or minority, and your role you can play in the upper house, which inevitably will shift in its balance, regardless of who wins.
Well, my pitch to the Victorian people is look at our track record. We've been elected in Victoria since 2018. We've never voted for an increase in taxes. We've got inquiries up into nuclear energy. We put up private members' bill to try and legalise nuclear energy. We're largely responsible for keeping a serial killer in prison. We've changed the conversation about organised crime and the incentives. I think that we've done a lot to, you know, raise issues in Victoria and raise things that are good for the future of Victoria. I think with the other parties, like, I mean, you know, there's new entrants like One Nation. They've actually been elected since 2022 in Victoria. And we've also got the Greens. Look, I think the Greens have actually been having a lot of trouble getting attention on things. They've desperately been trying to switch issues and trying to get social media attention, which hasn't been working. Actually, the Liberal Party are doing a lot better than they are, in my opinion, at the moment. So it really is a really unusual situation at the moment. I feel that the Libertarians have a very good grounding in our philosophy, so that we're sort of dependable to, you know how we're going to vote on things, or you've at least got a fairly good idea. Some of the other parties maybe not so much, but, you know, ultimately it's up to the Victorian people whether they appreciate that or not. And I'm in their hands, I guess.
Look, I well and truly hope that they do. And again, you know, from my perspective as a person who's been able to talk to you for a long time through your service, most importantly, when others want to look the other way, you're the first one to go and grab the dolphin torch and try to get the light in there, which is really important when, you know, we've seen literally the former Corruption Commission boss, the former Ombudsman, talk about how difficult this system is. And I think it's really important that somebody continues to be as well informed, aware of the institutional knowledge, and as fearless as you. So all the best, David. We'll talk many times between now and then, mate.
Thank you.
There he is. David Limbrick, of course, he's running for the Libertarians in the Victorian election. Go and find him on all the socials. Pretty good social media follow as well. Quick break, back with more. Yet more problems when it comes to the rollout of renewables. Two people who we know agree on everything will join us next to discuss. Thanks for watching us. The first night of Paul Murray Live here on News 24. A familiar face that's been a little zhuzhed up. Glad you're joining us. Thank you so much for joining us wherever you are around the country. Maybe you can always send me an email too, which is paul@news24.com.au. That's also the website. All of the socials have been updated as well. And don't forget, all of the highlights of what we do is on the website at news24.com.au. With us right now, National Party leader Matt Canavan. Nice to see him after a little time away, but glad to see him, mate, there in the House. And he had lots of things to do today. I'll get to that in a second. The great Nicholas Rees, who's, of course, the Lord Mayor of Melbourne, who I noticed on the news in Melbourne last night, a little critical of Jacinta Allen. Whew. giving it a little push on the way out, mate. Well, we'll discuss that all in a moment or two's time. So, Matt, tell me about the Grasmere Energy Policy Forum. It was there today where you were talking again about the on-the-ground implications of what is supposedly the only way to go.
Yeah, look, it was great to join Angus Taylor here in central Queensland at the Grasmere Sale Yards. Some of the best sale yards in the world, really. Yeah, we weren't there talking cattle though, just talking this major issue that's hit central Queensland in recent years, which is just wind and solar and battery projects earmarked everywhere, disrupting people's lives. We had 400 people turn up tonight. Heard some harrowing personal stories from people like Cedric and Therese Creed, who've had their farming communities split into two from a massive solar project. We had someone, Fiona, drive 7 hours to come along to the forum tonight, hosted by Carl Stefanovich. She drove 7 hours to tell her story about wind dividing her community at Jendowie, a beautiful community in the Darling Downs. It's just a story repeated everywhere. We just need to get this message out to more and more Australians that this current approach on energy policy is not working. It's not working for them because your power prices are going through the roof. It's not working for our economy because we're losing industry hand over fist. And it's killing and crushing the hopes and dreams of rural communities too. So none of it's really working, and yet this government just has its head in the sand. It's saying, let's just continue on a failed energy policy process. We need to change, and that's why Angus and I were there tonight saying we're going to scrap net zero, going to get rid of these ridiculous subsidies going to some of the largest companies in the world, often international companies for a start, and let's focus again on using our own resources, use all our coal, our oil, our gas, our renewables where it's appropriate to do so, but not everywhere, and do that to lower power prices for all Australians.
Nick, can we have a different version of this debate, which is I want to talk about implementation, all right? I know where you're coming from. I know where Matt's coming from. I also know when we were in Armidale last night, there's a bloke who's looking me in the eyes, got glassy eyes, and he's talking about significant land value changes that have happened on a multi-generational farm that he's got because of this stuff that's happening around, right? Real money, real consequences, right? Obviously, you're an advocate for let's keep ramping it up. But how the hell do we implement this differently that we don't get a scenario? We're not 400 weirdos, 400 citizens turn up on a Monday because what is happening to where they live is a disgrace.
Yeah, I don't doubt for a second that the stories Matt is telling about people who turned up and the challenges they're facing is absolutely real. And I know you were there at sale yards for this event, Matt, but I hope you weren't giving people hogwash on this topic. I hope you were telling the truth to people. And the truth is we can't go back to the coal age. We need to keep moving forward. That doesn't mean there aren't significant challenges here. And yes, when it comes to people who are having their property values or what they can get out of their property affected in some way, they need to be properly compensated. In fact, more than compensated, they need to do well out of the disruption that they're facing. But we can't go backwards. We need to keep going forward. And what we're seeing in Australia, particularly around solar and the installation of rooftop solar, is absolutely remarkable, Paul. We've got the highest level of rooftop solar of any country in the world. It's close to 40% of Australian households.
Sure, but no, and I don't
and that is
hate
fantastic.
that.
That's what we're talking about.
I don't hate that. Matt doesn't hate that. But what I do hate is the people who turned up, again, they've driven 7 hours to tell their story. But again, another thing here too, Matt, again, trying to have a different version of this conversation, is I was thinking about it when I was there in Armidale last night. Again, thank you to everyone who came along. It was an awesome night at the Welders Dog. It was a fantastic joint. Great venue, by the way. Lovely people. Was trying to work out, and one of the frustrations they have is that when they try to communicate with these companies, they just get nothing, right? There's this sort of, somebody rolls through with a clipboard once and then sort of doesn't communicate any further. It doesn't feel like the industry has a central place or some sort of place where you can take your grievance about the transition, if it is definitely rolling through a particular area, about how you don't go backwards so they can go forwards. How much is that part of the problem too? Is that, for want of a better term, that now big wind, big solar doesn't care and doesn't actually talk to these people?
Look, it's a huge part of the problem, but it's not the only problem. quite often the companies involved, and as I said, they're often international investors involved here, are not here for the long term. They seek to try and get a project up and running, possibly, if they're lucky, get some cool, hard taxpayer cash to back them, and they flip it. They flip the project once that's all done to a large energy company, a company connected to maybe a big industrial facility that wants to spruik its green credentials, and they walk away. And you don't have that long-term commitment. The other problem here is that the projects themselves don't really deliver any benefits locally anyway. Most other large projects, mining projects, manufacturing projects, deliver long-term jobs. These projects don't do that, not in any serious way. There's a handful of jobs left over after construction. During construction, most of the workers come from out of town anyway and live in camps. And so there's just not that local buy-in. And that's a major problem. But coming back to the broader problem here is, Nick said, look, we've got all this renewables on our roofs, and that's fine, that's great, but they're not working right now, Nick. It's night time. We've got too much of that stuff. We need a balance. We need a balance in our energy system. We don't have that balance under this government's energy policy. That's why you're paying through the roof for power prices. It's why we're losing our industrial competitiveness. And it's why we should get back to just being balanced. I'm not against all renewables. Sure, on people's roofs, fine. There's some other areas where we can have renewables. But we can't rely on it solely. And you can see that right around the world. Everywhere it's tried, it's failed. It's failing here as well. Let's get back to common sense and balance.
Well, I think it's WA. I'll correct it tomorrow if I double check. But they're doubling down on a brand new gas as the firming technology. So again, that's a Labor government. So we'll see plenty more on that. And we could spend all night, but there's a couple of things I want to get to. A little story that was around towards the end of last week, and I thought was going to build, which is why I didn't touch it a couple of days ago. And I thought it was going to build over the weekend. It didn't. It sort of came and went quickly, but its consequences matter. Of course, Fair Work Australia is the organisation that's there to settle significant industrial disputes, okay? Created by the Labor Party, and of course, as it is created by the Labor Party, it is staffed heavily by people who are on the union side of the equation. Yes, when the governments change, there's an ability to change the makeup, but they want to create a new thing called the Fair Work Court, where again, somebody would be able to adjudicate on other disputes that exist, including pay disputes, between workers and employers. Now, Nicholas, I'm always going to be on the side of the worker. I also don't want the boss to get flushed down the toilet. But when you put a new body together, is it not behoven on the government to say that because currently 0 positions, there's going to be 100% of positions that will be chosen by the political arm of the union movement, meaning that this is not a fair and equal umpire. It just ends up being a club for one side of the industrial dispute of Australia?
Well, I certainly don't hope that happen. Well, I certainly don't want to see that happen. I've actually got a lot of hope for this new body. And look, I say that as someone, I started my career as a lawyer. I used to work as an industrial relations lawyer, representing people in underpayment claims, unfair dismissal claims, all sorts of industrial type disputation. And we used to have an industrial relations court in Australia, and then the Howard government abolished it and moved it into the federal court. And I've got to say the federal court is more costly, more litigious than the old body used to be. So basically we're just bringing back what was once known as the Industrial Relations Court of Australia. It's now going to be called the Fair Work Court. And if it's done right, and I emphasise if it's done right, I think it could be a win-win for employers and employees. Why? Because it'll cut red tape, cut costs, get decisions made more quickly. It won't be too legalistic, be sort of common sense focused. And that's good for employers and it's good for employees as well.
And look, and again, on all of that stuff, no one's going to disagree. But Matt, when the legislation gets presented, right, is there an opportunity for the opposite? Because we know what the wedge is here, right? If you vote against it because you know they're going to stack 100% of it, right? Oh, they're voting on the sides of it. They hate work. You know, all of that rubbish, right? But is there the possibility, when the legislation is presented, to try to find some sort of a fix to the system to say that there has to be some level of balance about its makeup for the first 2 years when it is being built from the ground up? Otherwise, it's just a Labor stack fest, isn't it?
Look, I'm sure we'll seek to do things like that, Paul. Seek to have a proper Senate inquiry, I'm sure, and put forward some sensible amendments. The problem we've got at the moment is the Senate is a bit of a rubber stamp because the Labor Party is in effectively a coalition with the Greens. They worked on that coalition last time we met to massively jack up taxes, and they're likely here to add massive amounts of union-backed red tape. Look, I hear what Nick said, and there's a little bit of common sense to it, but I don't know. There just didn't seem to be anybody out there calling for this. It's come out of the blue. It's sounds like the Prime Minister needed to have an announcement, so he announced this. But where was the issue here? We've got a lot of other issues in our country right now, and I think the government should instead be focusing on fixing up the migration numbers and system, which is out of control, fixing up those energy issues I mentioned earlier, dealing with the cost of living, which is connected to those energy policy issues. I don't know. This seems like announcing something for the sake of announcing something. It's not necessarily really targeted at the major issues facing Australians.
All right, last one here, and make it quick for me because I've got to get to the UK in a moment because, as always, lots of news happening there. But, Nick, how can I just let this occasion pass? One of the great tourist attractions is returning after a long break. The Melbourne Star up and running, the giant Ferris wheel. People can get in there. Will you be the one pressing go? Do you cut a ribbon? What happens on Thursday?
Look, I just might be, Paul. This is a really big deal for Melbourne. A really big deal. Of course, it closed during COVID, so it's been shut for 5 years. And actually, when I first ran for Lord Mayor, I said I was going to get the wheel turning again, and plenty of people poo-pooed me and said it would never happen. Well, guess what? Next week, the wheel is going to start it's going to light up the wheel ahead of it turning again, and it's a great day for Melbourne, and the symbolism of having that wheel spinning again, it's pretty important for our city.
Oh, I'm with you. Congratulations.
Why did
it's
it
up in
close during
Docklands in the next
COVID?
few
I can't
days.
work out. Wouldn't you have been socially distanced in the
in the little bubbles? It's a very good point.
Look, it's a complex. It's like an episode of Utopia or something, but there's some mechanical issues.
But also my issue too, of all the stuff that was shut down by the authorities during COVID. Remember the Australia Day parade? If you can bring that back as well, because that had to go for COVID, didn't it? Yeah, I didn't.
I'm a supporter of the Australia.
I know you are. All right, I got to go. Thank you, guys. I do appreciate it. Thank you very much. Mark Dolan joins us next from the United Kingdom. Lots to talk about, including, she's back. Megan's on telly. On MasterChef again? Why? We'll discuss it in a second. He also had a chance to meet Pauline Hanson. Thank you so much for watching, wherever you happen to be. For Mark Dolan, of course, it's Talk TV normally, but of course that is in London, in the UK, where he joins us right now. Mate, before we get to some lighter stuff, let's talk about what happened in Berlin. This was a giant Pride event, and a van ram raids into it for, what we believe to be religious reasons. It's an obvious terror attack, and it's beyond a disgrace.
It is, and I don't need to convey to your Australian audience the dangers of this radical Islamist ideology. And Paul, the West have got to wake up. We're sick and tired of the bouquets of flowers, of the thoughts and prayers, of the hand-wringing. If all you do is hand-wring about it and perhaps suggest more CCTV cameras or more cops, you're missing the point. These great Western nations have unfortunately been asleep at the wheel as an ideology which hates the West has embedded itself. And in many cases, you can't say that this will be an illegal immigrant or a foreigner. It'll be a German or Australian or British-born person that has this hateful ideology, and it's got to be dealt with. And, we can learn from the Arab states, who are very tough on Islamism. And there was one particular, the United Arab Emirates, there's a report that they were reluctant for their youngsters to study in the United Kingdom for fear that they'll be radicalized.
Blimey.
So we've got to wake up, and we got to call this out, Paul.
Yeah, I mean, this is the thing, right, where there can be a very mature conversation about lots of people moving around the world and people searching for better lives, and none of us have a problem with all of that. But, I mean, particularly Germany made really bad choices. They were bad choices in real time. People saw them for what they are, and the consequences is, and I sort of, in the same way that the rest of us sometimes look at America when it comes to school shootings and just go, geez, how can this just be the price of 300 million people and occasionally weird things happen? I refuse that sort of dilemma to be in the West when it comes to attacks like this. That, look, are they terrible? Yes. Should we do something about them? Yes. Can we do something about it? No. Problem too big.
Most definitely. And you're right to point out the difference, because there are millions of Americans that have guns. And the bottom line is that, yes, it's a tragedy that you'll get these mass shootings, you'll get these tragedies. But that is the American way of life. The right to a handgun is central to the American life. You know, it's just part of being American. So you're not going to change that. This is different. This is nations that have given up their identity. They've opened their borders. And what you've got to navigate towards, get back to, is a multi-ethnic society based around European and Western values. And I think a lot of this is the failure of the multicultural experiment, which in my view, Paul, is a failed socialist idea. Multiculturalism sounds great, but really it's people living in parallel communities, no expectation of integration. So if you are a migrant into Australia and you're going to work, you're going to speak the language, you're going to follow the rules, and you're going to participate in what Australia is about, then you're very welcome. And if you're not, then you're not.
Let's jump right to the other end of the pool, the shallow end, the kiddie pool here, because Meghan's back on telly and apparently there's a need for her to be on MasterChef. Roll the tape. Oh, fair income. Like literally a theatre production of Cats is less staged than that rubbish.
Yes, I mean, this was another element of Harry and Meghan's horrible fake royal tour to Australia. This has been in the can for a little while, and I've been dreading it coming out, rightly so. Very performative from the Sussexes, pretending to be happily married. And of course, you know, Harry's got to keep the missus happy, you know, oh, hello, my love. You're so amazing, my love. What a joke. And then, of course, there was the reported row between Meghan and one of the judges about being introduced as royal. Well, you know, how do you want it to be, Meghan? Because at one point, you know, she's this independent, you know, global influencer and entrepreneur. Next minute, she's Duchess of Sussex. Which is it? Make your mind up.
Yeah, nobody's turning around and saying, please welcome former Deal or No Deal model, Meghan. Like, no, it's not happening, right? All right, last one here. You had the opportunity to talk to Pauline Hanson, who's, of course, our special guest in studio tomorrow night. Looking forward to that. How'd you find her?
She was on great form. She was shooting from the hip. She's not a conventional politician. She's authentic. And what she cares about is national identity. I think that Pauline is the canary in the coal mine. Yes, she's going to sometimes, you know, tonally go wide of the mark. She'll surprise people with some of her comments, but the message is clear. You know, she loves her country, and actually she loves the UK as well, recently describing Britain as a sad and sorry island. She's right. And I think she's got cut through for a good reason. And I'll tell you, she's massively popular in the UK now. She's kind of framed as the Australian Nigel Farage, which is not 100% accurate, but they both shoot from the hip. They're both authentic. And for both of them, the message is landing.
Thank you, mate. Appreciate it. Of course, you can find him on Talk TV, find him on YouTube as well, the great Mark Dolan. Thank you, brother. All right, quick break. Back with more here on Paul Murray Live. About 5 minutes away from the late debate. That's our show for tonight. Just enough time to remind you, this time tomorrow night we'll be wrapping up our special program with Pauline Hanson. She's going to be here in the News24 studio. We are looking forward to her not just answering the questions from the people that are in the room, but again, the idea is for her to answer the questions from around the country. We have got many bases covered, but obviously something will pop up. If something in the news, we'll mention it. But most importantly, this is an opportunity for you to see her for an hour. Okay, for you to see what she's like on her feet, for you to see her on lots of different issues. It is not sort of your typical experience where it's trying to trip her up. It's about giving her the opportunity to say what she believes. Here's the late debate. See you tomorrow with Pauline.